how, like, if you know of your ancestral roots of having some indigenous Native American in it, is that what caused you to become a part of the, no Dakota Pipeline movement? Or if it was just pulling on your heart as a woman of color, like, I need to do something? Or is it like all of the above?
I would say that it's definitely all of the above. I have a nonprofit organization, and our whole mantra is protecting the earth and teaching children the value of indigenous traditions as a way to have sacred community and sacred relationship with the planet. So it's already within my line of work. But interesting story. The family I kind of come from, we have very strong Native roots on both sides of my family. Both of my grandmothers on my father's side of the family are both Native. One is full Choctaw, the other one is Sioux, and my father's mother was Cherokee. And in my family growing up, it was something that wasn't talked about in the open because I came from a family that was very prideful in its African identity. It was something I took for granted. The rituals that were in my home, I always thought that they were African. I thought every Black home had dream catchers. I thought every Black home burned sage. I thought every Black home had traditions that I didn't realize until I was getting older, that other Black folk ain't doing this. This ain't African. When I got in school, and people started talking about, I got Indian in my family, I would see how those kids would get treated, and then I would shut up. Because when you claim any ancestry outside of African roots, oftentimes our culture
turns their backs.
Takes that as an affront to your African Blackness. They see that as you trying to not be Black if you're claiming some other ancestry. There were parts of me that felt it was important for me to reclaim that ancestry for my daughter, and to make sure that she had freedom to explore both parts of who she was. And then she looks it, there's no kind of escaping. My daughter is always being asked, what is she? And for her to constantly look at me and go, how do I answer that question? It made me more responsible to making sure that that part of her story was told. So when No DAPL came up, given that it's already within my life work, and this reclamation of myself for my daughter, it was kind of a no-brainer that this is where we were supposed to be.
I'm just going to do a brief, I'm going to say synopsis of what I understand about the situation. And I wanted to ask you if you can correct or interject whenever you can, if you need to correct me or kind of steer me in the right direction of what you see is going on since you've actually been there.
Sure.
Okay, so what I understand the situation basically is there is a pipeline that is trying to be built from that region that will actually reach into Illinois as well. And that pipeline, they want to build it underneath the Missouri River. And that part of the country, since February of 1869 through the Laramie Treaty, was promised to the Sioux Indians. And in the first two articles of that, it basically says that the Indians want peace and that we don't want to fight you and that we will always be peaceful towards you. And the second one is something about if any bad person tries to take the land from them, that the government will protect them. And that's basically what I see as being violated completely because we can't, I believe there's a lot of articles to this treaty, but even just the first two, I had to stop right there. And I'm like, wait, what are we doing already? And to me, it seems like the government is trying to protect a private company versus trying to protect its citizens and its Native people. And recently, as of I think 2 nights ago, it actually turned very violent where there were rubber bullets being shot at protesters or water protectors, or however you want to refer to them, and also tear gas thrown. And a woman has to have her arm amputated from I don't know if it was a tear gas canister or what hit her. I saw the pictures, it was awful. People were hit in the head with rubber bullets. They've had water cannons that they said they were putting out fires. And it seems like from the footage that I saw that there were some small fires, but according to the water protectors and the protesters, they said those fires were caused by the grenades that the police were shooting, not them. And they basically sprayed people in 23-degree weather with water, which to me, I was on Twitter and my hashtag was, my thing is in 2016, because it seems like in a lot of ways, we are going back to things that we saw in the 1950s and 60s with water hoses and things like that. And did you see anything wrong with my synopsis or how I saw it or what is going on or anything?
No, you captured it. You're on the money. I would say that the fires that are there at the Red Warrior Camp, because there's several camps at the site, and the Red Warrior Camp is where the frontline actions are taking place. Those are the people that are putting their bodies in the way of the construction of the pipeline. But those fires, one, are set for warmth because it's very cold.
Right.
And the two, there are sacred fires that are burning all over the campgrounds. In the Ocheti camp where I was, which is the ceremonial camp, there are sacred fires that they build to pray around as a ritual. So those fires were no threat to anyone. They've been burning for months. The sacred fires never go out. They never get extinguished.
Because they're sacred.
So the fires that are burning at Red Warrior Camp were more than likely sacred fires and fires for warmth.
Which now makes me even more interesting, because that's a religious freedom that I think they're also infringing upon when they do that, and just in general, just extremely disrespectful. And it makes me upset.
What's so sad about the whole thing, as you stated, this is a violation of the treaty. They are on their own sovereign land. They are on their own property. They are protecting their own property under the treaty. The simplest thing that can be done right now is for our president to enforce the treaty, and all this goes away.
And it's really interesting, because one article that I read was talking about, I believe, the people of, was it Bismarck, which is a neighboring area where mainly non-indigenous people said, hey, we don't want this. Yeah. And the government protected them and said, hey, okay, let's move it. And then they moved it to, to Standing Rock or through that area. And then it's just kind of like, oh,
Yep. Nobody, no government, no governing body on this planet is bold and bad and unapologetic enough to go after big oil. And this is big oil. This has nothing to do with, one politic over another. Big oil owns this planet in so many ways that is beyond just what we put in our tank, beyond what we burn for dinner, beyond, the product. It's petroleum. And so it's big oil is a huge, huge, giant Goliath. And the only thing that is going to shift any of this is our divestment in the institutions, in the funders, and the structures and the corporate offices that we invest in our everyday life. We are consuming things that we are not even aware of, that is paying into the structures that are oppressing these people. And until we really get an understanding of what banks we bank with, what products are we investing, how much driving do we really need to do, the divestments of our consuming behavior is what needs to be paid attention to, because we can shout and protest and be as enraged as we want to, but if our consumption habits are paying into the very structures that we are challenging, then it won't change. It won't make any difference. So my whole thing is, yeah, shut down the banks, do what needs to be done, but buy less, consume less, and divest your money and your consumption habits. Don't buy as much. Don't buy from these people. And if we can figure out how to do that well, then, you know, the structure that we are dependent on will naturally fall away. I think the most important thing to do is to raise as much awareness as possible. I think that people really just don't know. And the stories that are being told already the other night, and this isn't the first incident, they've sprayed them with pepper spray and rubber bullets. They've shot horses. They've killed horses. And arrests are going on a daily basis. When I was there were 37 people arrested for just no reason. They're kidnapping people off of the outskirts of the peace camp. So
wasn't there also a journalist that was arrested too and charged with rioting or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, these things are happening all the time. The big movements, when they do what they did the other night, this stuff is happening all the time. It's just, and even when it did occur, and I'm getting real-time information from the front line, you know, by the time it makes it to CNN, the spin is that the protesters did something to incite that reaction, which is not happening. So the most important thing is for us to stay very aware of what's going on and to spread that truth as much as we can, because the majority of the country don't know what's going on. And that's sad for those of us who are like in consciousness, and we open up that portal for those truths to be told through our network. That's a given. But there are huge amounts of the population that don't understand what's going on, and for whatever reason, they're leaning toward the pipeline needs to happen because of all the rhetoric that's going on around jobs that are needed, and, you know, blah blah blah. So I think the first thing is just spreading the word and giving people the true facts as widely as possible. The second thing that people can do, if you cannot get to Standing Rock and be a body in that space, is to pray, 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 pray. And I know that sounds passive, but what's fascinating about Native American culture is they believe that prayer and ceremony is as radical and revolutionary as standing on those front lines. It's not a passive approach to it. It is what is absolutely necessary. So whatever whatever God you pray to, pray that our planet stays, you know, as safe as possible and our waters run clean, and that this atrocity comes to a peaceful end.
And I wanted to add one more thing too, that I think this is the first time that all the tribes have actually united for a cause. So when we talk about ceremony and prayer and what's important, they felt that this was so important that they laid down whatever issues they had and said, we are one people. And I think that's really important for all of us to think about that. Again, as water protectors, they're just not protecting their land. They're protecting the earth. They're protecting our earth. They're protecting the water for you, for me, for our future generations. And that's something that's also very instilled in Native American culture that I think is forgotten about, not talked about, and why it is also so disrespectful to put even to try to take their land in general, but then just to do whatever they want to their land, but to put an oil pipeline underneath a water source, it's just like, it's unfathomable. And
these water pipeline projects are failing all over the country. It's not that they've had success with these pipelines, and the argument is that they're safe, they create jobs, but renewable energy infrastructure will create 3 times as many jobs as, you know, business as usual pipeline construction. Mm-hmm. So I disagree with this rhetoric that it's safe and that it creates jobs. Is just hooey. It's an antiquated infrastructure that our entire planet is moving away from. So to spend billions of dollars on oil infrastructure when really, you know, we need to be divesting in these structures, because oil should not be the thing that we're spending the most money on if we're thinking 7 generations ahead.
Right.
So I think that we need to kind of stop being dependent on it, which means that, you know, comes to my next point of what we can do in our everyday lives. And that's just check where you're purchasing stuff. Check, you know, there's an entire mechanism around, you know, prison labor and the products that are coming out of these prisons that we buy every day. These constructs and infrastructures are designed to continue to oppress one portion of the population so that the other portion of the population can benefit financially. And until we really understand how that works in our everyday lives, because I don't think any of us wake up with the intention of making bad people rich and poor people oppressed, but somehow our behavior is playing into that paradigm. So our best thing to do is, you know, what I mean by divestment is don't buy it. So in my home, I've done a lot to divest our dollars out. If we know that a child is making it in Bangladesh, don't buy it. You don't need that sweater.
Mm-hmm.
If you know that Chinese people are being oppressed and there are sweat lodges around those pair of shoes, that you don't buy it. If you know that there are Black boys being imprisoned to make your Victoria's Secret panties in your Starbucks cup, don't buy it. It's that simple. And that is the kind of dedicated consumption habit that we are going to all have to participate in order for that system to not benefit from what we do. Because they can't imprison the people, they can't oppress the people if we don't pay into it. So weatherizing my home, making sure that I keep my energy heating and cooling down as much as possible, so that I'm not paying big oil and big coal. Making sure that if there is an opportunity for me to bike or take public transportation to keep dollars from needing to, you know, me filling up oil every single week. Those are the little things that you can do. You don't have to go to Standing Rock and get pelted in the face by a rubber bullet. You can buy stuff. And if all of us did, and it sounds small, but that's really where it is. That's the sweet spot of how we play into this mechanism of oppression.
And I'm so glad you said that. And as women, we make a lot of decisions in the household. We are the ones deciding, you know, what comes in and what comes out. So we have to do our homework. We have to do our due diligence and find out.
What's so funny about it, as much as everyone is on these things, you can literally Google search where things are made. Wikipedia, all of that. It's just being conscious enough and aware and accountable, not just to yourself or holding yourself accountable, but also being accountable to this planet that we live on and the person next to you, to say, you know, to make that choice, to say, ooh, I'm not going to do that.
Do you guys have anything else you want to say?
I just wanted to input to, it's self-preservation. And we have to, like Ms. Toni was saying, go back to the basics and be more intimate within our households and our products that we're buying and using. And why are we going to KFC to buy chicken that we know they don't wash when we can wash it and cook it ourselves at home and be a lot more protected and not feeding into the companies that are trying to destroy us physically and mentally?